Welcome to Universe Unveiled, the podcast where we explore the mysteries that challenge our understanding of history and the universe. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jacqueline. We're here today with another UU Crew Sesh. We do these about once a month to share what we're learning with you and with each other as part of our global open source research initiative. But first, we want to introduce our crew, starting with Shaman. Shaman, tell everyone who you are and where they can find you.
My name is Jason Huffman, screen name Shaman711. You can find me there on X, YouTube, and Rumble. And most recently, you can find me and the guy sitting in the corner above me, Ricardo, in our new presentation. I guess we call it brother presentation of you guys find, you're setting such a fine example of what can be done. We figured we better try to, catch up with you in some way. So we've got the shaman and the philosopher, and we're proud to be here in tandem. And Ricardo, say something.
So, hello, and thank you for having me here one more time. So my name is Ricardo, and as Jason was saying, yes, we are trying to catch up with the shaman and the philosopher, which I'm not sure we can do it because they have a very good show. But at least we come and we miss ourselves into her show, and so we try to catch them.
out of respect and honor, we are honestly trying to take a very different direction, what we hope is sort of a complementary direction to what you guys have set out, in all honesty. It is truly something we're trying to catch up with, but we're trying to honor and respect and complement and work with is what we're trying to do.
That and be attacked by every single side, but
enemies of the state and the rebels on some days, but we're out here on our campfire, by the creek, holding it down, doing what we can.
Well, I would say that the fact that has been so much commenting, both on Universe Unveiled and on the Shaman and Philosopher, I think it's a good sign that we are putting our fingers in some wounds and people is hurting somewhere. So,
well, look, we're all people who love questions, right? And I think at the heart of it, like today, we're going to do with my favorite recently, the copper conundrum. We're just going to look at these things that pose questions, and there's going to be sides. There's going to be answers established because of narratives that are already in place on both sides. To me, what's interesting is to try to remain as objective as possible, see what's in front of me, and what you get are questions, and those are fun. Mysteries and the seeking of knowledge and answers.
Well, I think the big problem here, in considering we are presenting guests, people are misunderstanding the messenger for the king, and so I think it's important for the audience to realize that our job is not to say that the person we are talking to is right or wrong. We are just reacting according to the evidence we are being presented and with our knowledge that we can evaluate what we are being given, right? So, although we might be more inclined to say, yeah, it makes sense, I think you are on the right path, I'm not saying that to this or that academic, you are a dumbass, you don't know what you're talking about. It's just an open discussion. And so if people are offended by different opinions, then they shouldn't be in the academic realm, because the academic realm is about discussion, is about confronting, is about trial and error, it's about to try and find
advancement is about those things.
So we are not trying to dismiss anyone. We are just presenting what is given to us. So and going along with it. And the same goes for today's presentation. I'm only presenting facts, so people can take those facts as they want. And when I say facts, is the best explanation that we have at this point from academic research. It doesn't mean that is correct, because we are discovering new things every single day, and things can change, right? I think the problem is that the academic is not ready for change, and resists it to the nth degree before it says, okay, we are wrong, or to present conclusive evidence that we are wrong. We, when I say we, it's not the we, but it's the people that are presenting the ideas.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, that's correct. And plus, these people, man, they're just like you and I, right? In so many ways, they're independent researchers, and so like you say, we're not trying to take sides, but in some ways, we are, right? Because we do need to honor and respect these people that, in my experience this week, are not granted respect. Sort of, it's like a carte blanche thing. If you're not associated with the correct academic or professional side, you are not granted the same privilege of being listened to. Instead, there's sort of this vein of over energetically dismissing something. That's all. And it's been a headache,
Well,
but it's worth it. It's worth it for the questions to be asked and addressed, right?
And
So-
at least this wouldn't work for every show, but at least on our side, anyone that has something to say and thinks that what was presented is wrong is free to reach out and say, look, I have my piece to say, and we'll have you on without any bias, and you'll have the opportunity to speak, but you'll be subjected to our own inquisition as we do every single guest. So if you have something to say, it's better not be just he's a liar or is wrong. Right. You have to say something more than that. So
it's nobody's fault that if the evidence presented is compulsory, right? Ladies, here we'll get us rolling into today's topic, and why I'm excited about it is just that reason. The evidence is compulsory, and if I'm the excited layperson, which I am, we're excited about these topics, then these things compel us, right? That's all, and it's not our fault if we're excited about how compelling this evidence is. So, and the reason I'm really excited about this copper thing, Ricardo and I have covered it a little bit now, and I'm just excited to see your reaction, and what you think the questions that are posed here as we dive into Ricardo's presentation.
I'm excited. I've been waiting on this copper presentation for a long time so I could hear it, kind of from the horse's mouth. So my knowledge on the whole copper thing is like, I know the basics, but I'm looking forward to getting down to brass tacks. See what I did there?
I do. Get down to brass tacks, man. How much for the monkey? Is that fear and loathing? I lost one.
Sorry, I had to.
How much for the monkey? No. All right, Ricardo.
Well,
take us into the real work before we.
I'm more on the part that says, "Bring us some golf shoes, or we never get out of here.
Never
alive.
Get out of this muck alive."
So.
They had coffee and donut. What was it? I can't even remember it, Ricardo. Let's not go down that vein. Okay. T-shirt, man. I'll follow you all day down that rabbit hole.
Okay, so I think the ladies are expecting me to start, and so I shall.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, those of us who had been up all night were in no mood for coffee and donuts.
No,
we needed a strong drink. Go, bro.
So the Old World, encompassing Europe, the Near East, and parts of Africa, witnessed the dawn of metallurgy during the Chalcolite and Bronze Ages, from 5500 to 1000 BC, which copper as a cornerstone of early technological and cultural advancements. Copper mining emerged across different regions, from the Balkans to the Sinai Peninsula, driven by the exploitation of carbonate ores like malachite and sulfite ores like chalcopyrite. These mines, worked by Neolithic, Chalcolithic, and Bronze Age communities, supplied metal for tools, ornaments, and weapons, fueling trade networks that connected distant societies. Mining techniques, including stone tools, anvil picks, and fire setting, evolved alongside smelting methods, which range from simple hearts to sophisticated crucibles. The purity of copper varied by ore type and smelting expertise, with carbonate ore often yielding purities above 99% slightly, and while sulfide ores typically ranged lower due to impurities like iron and sulfur. So in this presentation, I'll try to synthesize the data that I gathered about around 40 key copper mines and adding many others that are very small in scale, and detailing their historical context, production estimates, and their copper purity. This is all based on archaeological excavations, chemical analysis, and lead isotope studies. So estimates, let's that we dive into this, first we need to
Ricardo,
understand.
may I just lay out for the girls
Of
the
course.
basic what you're going for here. So what he's about to lay out for us in clear detail is this sort of basic fact. I call it the copper conundrum, in my notes and when I talk about it, is that in what we call the old world, we have the copper age, right? So you have evidence of copper harvested. You also have lots of copper artifacts, right? When I look at the artifacts, I realize that the amount of copper harvested was not enough to equate for the artifacts I find. Now, when I come over here to what they call the New World, right, America, and I look in many areas, but specifically like the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, I find somebody was mining lots of copper, lots of really pure copper, really easily to mine. I then look at the artifacts. We know the natives had copper. You can see the plates, right? The beautiful, we have the stories. There was copper around. But when you look at those artifacts, you then realize the inverse is happening. I have much more copper taken out of the ground than I could ever account for in my artifact record. And that then equals what I call the copper conundrum, or Ricardo, the paradox. And we'll dive into that.
Sure, absolutely. Now, let us now debate about. So I think it's important for people to understand the differences between the copper ores of the old world. So they fall into two categories. There are the carbonate ores that include malachite and azurite, and they are the sulfide ores that are the chalcopyrite. So these were exploited, as I said, from 5500 to 1000 BC across Europe, Near East, Africa, Neolithic, the Chalcolith, and the Bronze Age communities to produce the tools and the ornaments and the weapons and everything that we find in the archaeological record done from this. So in terms of the carbonate ores, and I think I'm going to change the slide so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. If I find the slide, maybe it's on the other way. I'm sorry for this.
Hey, can you make your thing bigger, like Vince did for us yesterday? Just a little? Maybe. Okay.
Can you see it better like this?
Oh, dude, that's all the way. Yeah, that's brilliant. You might even need to take it back just a little. But yeah, you nailed
Take it back.
The only people who know where the line are the ones that go over it, Ricardo. But yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, man.
Okay, so I think you can all see in the screen. It only takes time for me to explain all of this, but they have very different composition and extraction process is different for each one of those. But the point here that is important for us to understand the scale of what I'm talking about, and I'm going to talk about in the what was extracted from the mines, is that although we find enormous amount of material taken from the old world mines, it's only 1 to 6% of that material can be is copper. So after the material is taken out of the mines, it has to be processed, and the only thing that sees, as I'm not sure if you can see on the screen here, the sulfide ores produced 1 to 4% in weight. Right. So even if you have 20,000 cubic meters of material of ore taken, only 1 to 4% of that material is copper. So if you go to the carbonate ores, you get a little slightly better, from 2 to 5%. Right. And this is, as you will see, is a huge difference compared to the New World copper that has nothing of these conditionants. So
the old world copper, in order to get at it, you have to basically mine another material, and a very small percentage of that material, 1 to 4%, is actually the copper.
Exactly that.
Okay. Right.
So in carbonate ores, and now I'm going to talk a little bit about the purity. In carbonate ores, you can go up to 94.4% of purity. Right. There are some cases, and I find in the ancient site that is called OLO1, it's the only place where by smelting they achieved 99.7. Okay, but it's a unique situation. The top that I've seen in the old world is 99.6, and it's on the most sophisticated systems of smelting the the ore that can be found in any documentation from the academics in this regard. So let me go back to see where I was.
That is the high point. It is a rare high point, but according to all academic research, that is the best number possible, and it didn't happen often.
It didn't happen often. So let me change the slide for you. Okay, let's see. Let me go to the summary, because otherwise we'll be looking at 40 mines, and no one wants that.
Yeah, I've read those already. They don't just trust me. It all says it. It's all there.
So what I want you to understand is these are the productions of Europe or the old world. And so I include North Africa, parts of Minor Asia. These are the total productions between 4500 and 1000 BC. So as you can see, the Balkans produced from 26 to 66 tons. Of course, people are saying, oh, it's much more. Yes, the ore that was extracted from the mines is much more, right? This is only up to 6% of everything that was done. So you have to multiply the 66 tons, considering that it's just 6% of the material that was taken from the mines. But that's not copper. Right. That's the raw material. When processed, it translates to a maximum of 26 to 66 tons. And the purity range of the Balkans is from 99 to 99.3%, right? And all of this, as you go into the Institute for Natural Philosophy at Academia Edu, you have all these mines shown their history, the process of mining, what was found. It's everything there. So if you think that I'm just throwing numbers, I'm not.
There's a lot of data.
All of this is academic. So this is a summary of about 140 academic papers.
Right.
So
And to boil down what the advocate, or the adversary might say here to these questions, ladies, right, is Ricardo is pointed out, we learned in the prior frame, that they will say the material that was taken out of the ground is my total tonnage, and that's enough for the artifacts. But when you then look here at these numbers, you go, no. Remember, only about 4% of that or so was actually copper. Right.
So I'm jumping a lot of pages here. I don't know if you were going to say something, Jacqueline. Jacqueline, were you going to say something?
Gentleman and a scholar. So we're running through the numbers here of the total old world copper, and you've also got listed out for me its purity range. That is after processing. That is the purity of the copper that I will see reflected. And these are important because when we come over and look at the New World, we're going to see very different numbers. We're going to see mass of copper coming out of the ground and its purity range being naturally what you're finding here in these highly processed and smelted copper products of the Old World.
There is a threshold between the purity of the Old World and the purity of the New World, but we'll get there soon in the presentation. Just let's keep in mind, so the United Kingdom, as I was saying, that is considered to be a massive producer of copper. It was one of the hubs of the whole world to export and trade copper and bronze. When you look at the numbers, all of the United Kingdom only produced from 15 to 57 tons. So it's very, very little, okay?
Chump change.
Yes. Then we have, I'll pass through this, Ireland, France, Spain, Italy, Switzerland. And here is one that will interest us greatly. There is Cyprus. So the very name, the etymology of this name means copper. So it was considered to be the copper island. And yet, when we look at the production, not only doesn't go through the whole 4500 to 1000 BC, they only produced copper from 3000 to 2000 BC. They only did from 11 to 35 tons of copper. So this is the center of the old world of copper production and distribution for trade, with ships going everywhere, taking their copper and they only produce 11 to 35 tons during this period of time, right? And their purity never goes above 98.8%, which is relevant, and that is why they don't allow the testing of the oxide ingots that were found in the Uluburum shipwreck, because the results of the purity are way above this. So that's why it's not shown.
So there is a shipwreck, ladies, that was found over wherever. He'll get to the details, but they had a lot of copper, just a massive amount of copper. They were in little ingot forms. It was a copper ship, right, moving material, and its purity is higher than what you're going to find in really any of these numbers. And remember, these numbers are after the professional process of smelting, right? That's why he keeps saying only, because you're going to see sort of the converse of these numbers here in just a second.
Absolutely. So the archaeological record of copper production in the Old World between the 5500 and 1000 BC presents then a paradox that has not yet been satisfactorily resolved. On one hand, there is clear evidence of mining and smelting at numerous sites, stretching from the Balkans to the Central Europe through Anatolia, the Levant, the Iranian Plateau, Arabia, Central Asia. And on the other hand, the cumulative volume of these mines, even taken generously, falls far short of what is required to explain the abundance of copper and bronze artifacts recovered from settlements, burials, hoards, and trade networks across Eurasia and North Africa. The imbalance between production and consumption constitutes the core problem that this study addresses. So, when aggregated, these regional surveys confirm that the Old World copper production was real, sustained, and widely distributed. It is distributed. Yet, even the most generous estimates of cumulative output fall short when compared to the quantity of copper represented by artifacts across all of these areas. We have thousands of axles, chisels, daggers, spearheads, cauldrons, ornaments, and vessels that survive and has been preserved by archaeological chance. And this is just what has been preserved. Keep it in mind. So the true volume of copper once in circulation must have been vastly greater. So the mining record, by contrast,
it's not only what survived, bro, it's only what's been found.
Exactly.
You know, it is of the potential, it is a minuscule percentage.
It's true. So the mining record, by contrast, remains confined to relatively modest outputs measured in the hundreds or at most low thousands of tons over the millennia. So this disparity is consistent across regions and time periods. It's not confined to one province, nor to one chronological horizon. So it recurs wherever the data are examined closely in the Old World. So the problem is therefore structural rather than incidental. The Old World artifact record implies a scale of supply that its mining record cannot substantiate. And this is the point that we are trying to make. So the academics have tried to bring us several explanations to solve this imbalance. But as you're going to see, none of them is even logical. They say that recycling. So while recycling was undoubtedly common, it cannot create copper where none exists. The very fact that artifacts survive in such numbers indicates that not all metal was endlessly remelted. Recycling shows the disappearance of copper, but cannot explain the positive presence of more artifacts than the mines should allow. Moreover, if, as Dan was saying in his episode about the copper, sorry, it's not Dan, it's Michael Collins on his video, and then I think it was there. They were saying that, okay, you have a huge piece of copper, and then the copper starts to wear out. So then they reuse it and they make a smaller knife, and then they use it and make a smaller, and then at the end is just a hook for fishing. But that only helps what I'm saying, because it means that it was even more copper than the one that I'm putting in here. So the imbalance is even bigger, created by recycling and not the other way around. They cannot explain the change, because it produces exactly into my direction. It was even more copper than the one that we are seeing. Then they say that is loss and corrosion. So copper alloys are chemically stable under many burial conditions. The durability of other materials such as ceramics, lithics, and even organics in the same context undermines the argument that corrosion accounts for a missing mass of copper. If anything, the artifact record will have likely underrepresents the original production, making the imbalance greater than smaller. Again, it's the same thing again. If they are presenting corrosion and loss, they are just increasing the amount of copper that existed, and it has nothing to do with the copper that was taken from the mines, because this is only related to use. It's not related to mining, right? And the last argument, you want to say something?
No, it's look, if I'm looking at a spreadsheet and I'm only looking at a spreadsheet, you can put forward this recycle argument. But as Ricardo just laid out, I think pretty simply, if I've recycled something, if I've taken my metal, and if I find a hook and I say this is recycled copper, okay, well, what that means, what you're saying is there was more copper, right? Back at some point, because I didn't, when I reuse it and make it, it's smaller. I've lost some, right? So the
Right.
numbers just can't be thrown out logically to account for this. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the bottom line is that in the old world, the supply surpassed production no matter what.
Right.
Sorry, I was taking myself out of mute again.
It's that there's not enough supply, right? For the copper that has been found, right?
Right. But the amount that was available surpasses the amount that was possibly to be produced in the old world. So it had to come from somewhere else, is my point.
Yeah. There's more artifacts than copper that could be mined according to the data.
Right.
So just in my artifacts that I have found alone and then project, most definitely we're here, that number is far greater than the number of what was brought out of the ground, right? So where did the copper come from? Where is all this weight of copper coming from if it did not come from these mines in this ground?
Yeah, and this is a problem that has been looked for more than 40 years, because when they start looking at the amount of, we haven't reached it yet, but when they start looking at the amount of copper that was taken out of the ground in the Upper Peninsula of the United States, the numbers are enormous. And then when they look at the copper that is found in the archaeological record, is like from 0.3 to 5% of what was found. So, and this is the 5% is already extrapolating for lots of copper that we haven't found yet.
Right.
So
that's baked into the data. Not only does the data include what we found, but then what is the reasonable projection of what does that mean was actually here?
Exactly. So I think I didn't point. So the last point that they make to justify this, they say, oh, it's undiscovered mines. So it is possible that significant mines remain undiscovered, yet geology and modern survey make it unlikely that entire copper province on the scale of Great Lakes or what Europe considers big, as for instance Cyprus with its maximum of 30 tons, is still unfound. While smaller mines will continue to be found, they cannot plausibly breach the gap of thousands of tons required to meet that mark of the artifacts that we find. So in sum, conventional explanations can mitigate, but they cannot resolve the imbalance. The deficit persists, stubbornly pointing to a missing component in the story of the Old World mythology. Now, perhaps the most striking single piece of evidence illustrating the Old World copper deficit is the Uluburum shipwreck. And I'm going to move on.
Ricardo, stay there. Just before you leave the slide you're on, please. The numbers.
Oh, you have the numbers? Okay. Let me go back.
Go back to, just to the one you're on. Yes, right here. Okay, so just so we're clear on this disparity, these numbers here. The Old World, right, maximally produced or used in its artifacts 100,000 tons of copper. Okay. Now, the minimum they used is 10,000 tons. It's a wide disparity, right? But still, let me look at what was actually taken out of the ground, right? The maximum is only 1,100 tons. Where are my 99,000 tons? Where are my 9,000 tons? That's the question.
And even if
The
they
math ain't
refute,
mathing.
even if they refute these numbers, which I find it hard because it's their papers, that's where I took the information from.
Correct.
If they want to refute it, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to increase this maximum of extracted 10 times, and you still won't do
It's
anything.
still not enough.
Nothing.
That's to your point, to keep us where you're going. You're about to say they put forward, well, there's mines that haven't been found. Yeah, there sure are. Okay. So now, how many of these mines would I need to find? How big would they need to be based on what I know about the mines? And girls, I read this. Okay. There's 40 mines and numbers in here from across the old world, and they're all the same. They are all the same. How many of these do I now need to find in order to find my 9 to 99,000 tons? What's the answer, Ricardo?
So I think what you find there is that in every single mine or area that is known for its copper in the old world, you'll find that only a few mines had the material available and production to export, to trade it to far away distances. Most of them, as I said in the text, most of them were localized. They produced just enough for their needs as a community, as a group. So very few of these places, of these 40 mines, had available material and could process material fast enough in order to be able to export, right? And there's another problem, one that we might go into high detail when we talk with Rick Osmond. That is the problem of the trees and the wood required to smelt all of this copper. Because if you start using the trees to smelt the 10,000 tons or the 100,000 tons of artifacts that we find in the old world, we shouldn't have a single tree today in Europe, anywhere. Wow. Because everything would be decimated, because the amount of
the
wood
heat
by
required,
weight, the amount of weight of wood necessary to smelt the copper is enormous, right?
That's a good point.
Just look at Cyprus. Where are the trees? Because they spend what they have, and then they start having
a rock island.
They had to import the wood to keep smelting, right? But what happens if you are given a copper that doesn't need smelting? That the only thing you have to do is to go to 1,000 degrees in order to mix it with tin to make bronze. It's a much simple process.
Well, Ricardo, if I were dealing in copper and I heard rumor on the street that there was some exceptionally pure product that I did not have to put any energy into in order to process, would you have any idea where I would look for such a product?
Oh, I might have an idea. I think we'll, if we dig enough, we'll manage to find it.
I've heard rumors of a beautiful location somewhere called the UP.
Yeah, the UP Peninsula.
Word on the street was the natives don't know quite what to do with it, and the shit's so pure you don't even have to put fire to it. So why don't you educate us about this secret location known as the New World?
A magical land.
I just want to say, when you just said the natives don't know what to do with this, you are speaking from the mind of the Europeans of the time, of the old world.
Correct.
Right? Before people start making assumptions that we are.
I was taking the point of that you find in the DeSoto Chronicles,
exactly.
Those poor. But my point is, they didn't have a mass industry. Okay. So my little joke I was using there is I was a street drug dealer, Okay. But so my point is, the guys over here with the pure stuff, they didn't have a capitalistic processing system. They didn't care. There was no need for masses of this stuff. They used it. It was important to them. They knew what it was, and they used it in some fine and exceptionally impressive ways. Right. But that was it. That's what it was to them. They did not have a mass market of copper drug addicts that they had been supplying for thousands of years and had to find more for, right? That's what I was alluding to, was it was a very pure form of copper that Ricardo is about to demonstrate for us over here with these natives.
But before I get there, let me just make this point with the Iluburum shipwreck, because I think it's one of the smoking guns of the whole of the whole idea of that I'm trying to convey here about copper. So the Iluburum shipwreck is dated to the late 14th century BCE. So right in the middle of all of this that we are trying to figure out. So it was off the coast of southern Anatolia, and the cargo contained approximately 10 tons of copper. Keep the number in mind, 10 tons of copper that were cast into 354 oxide ingots. And so these oxide ingots, let me see if I'm showing them in the image so that people know what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, good.
So
yeah.
you see this like an animal's pelt. This is what they did to the copper in order to put him at the bottom of the ship that helped to stabilize the ship when he was sailing large distances. So these ships they say, they couldn't do long distance voyages because they didn't have a keel. Well, they didn't need a keel because the way they put the cargo will make that keel on the bottom of the ship. Mm-hmm. So let me go back to the ship again.
So we have product designed for shipping on the Iluburum.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So they have, as I said, 354 oxide ingots and a smaller number of bun ingots. The bun ingots are very interesting, but sorry?
They sure are.
They are very interesting, but
they're setting off alarms.
Yes, immediately. But they only one was found in the New World. Only one bun ingot. So it could be used for further confirming everything that we are trying to unveil. But I wouldn't touch them now because it's a subject that has to be further developed.
So there's a lot of questions. Let's just say, I mean, we're trying to unearth questions. There's nothing wrong with saying we've got an excellent question here.
So the only thing that they tell us is that the chemical and isotopic analysis of these ingots have shown that the copper was of exceptional purity, with some of these ingots exhibiting anomalous trace elements, including mercury, that are difficult to parallel in the Old World sources. Why? Because when copper is being produced in the geological terms, it hits above 500 degrees, obviously. So when that happens, the mercury disappears. Mm-hmm. So the only place where you can find mercury in copper, funny enough, is in the UP area. Because
they didn't use heat, cold hammering that.
No.
Is that why?
No. I'm talking about the geological process of copper being created itself as a metal.
Oh, right.
So, for instance, when they took when they did the first samples, the testing in the Luleå lab in Sweden, they said, we have never seen this before. This is the top lab in the world in metallurgy testing, and they had never seen mercury in copper. And so they had to go and try to figure out how it's possible. And geologically, the only place when that it happened is because when the area of the Upper Peninsula was being created geologically, the pressures were enormous. And because of that, even if the metal was heated, the mercury couldn't exit he couldn't get out. He couldn't evaporate. So when it surfaced, it was still trapped inside the copper. And that's a unique signature that you can't find anywhere else. Because they recently found float copper in what's the country that is in war with Russia? I keep forgetting the name. Ukraine. So they now found float copper in Ukraine. They don't know how much is it, but that doesn't have the mercury. So it is absolutely unique. So the quantitative implications of this cargo are just remarkable. These 10 tons of copper and 1 ton of tin. So based on current archaeological and metallurgical reconstructions, based on the total synthesized in this study, the implied average annual copper yield from the Old World mines would be in the order of, and take notice, 0.06 to 0.28 tons a year. Okay? All of the mines, all of them. So on that base, the Uluburun cargo alone represents the equivalent to 32 to 142 years of total world production.
Right.
Okay, so this
Right.
calculation
This would have
underscores.
had to have been a bank. This was a cultural bank of material. This was far too much for this just to be going between islands of Crete. They would not have risked it if this were indeed that precious to them.
So this calculation underscores the central paradox of Old World metallurgy. When a single shipment of copper exceeds by orders of magnitude what regional mining could plausibly supply. So the Uluburun case makes clear that the Old World mines, as currently understood, cannot explain the scale of copper in circulation. Even if one ship could carry so much metal, then either far larger mines existed undiscovered in the Old World, or copper was entering the Mediterranean networks from elsewhere. So when viewed alongside the great surpluses mined in North America, the Uluburun becomes a bridge between two otherwise disconnected records, the abundance of artifacts in Eurasia and the abundance of mining in the Great Lakes. So let me show you this slide now so you have an idea of what, if the slide, here it is. Please let me zoom. It doesn't let me zoom. Why?
What is it? Control Alt plus?
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. You got excited there. So we
Colors.
have 10 tons of copper, 354 oxide ingots there, which represents the 0.06 to 0.28 tons a year. So in here you can see in numbers if you didn't understood when I was speaking. And
The
this
zero is the important number.
is the important number. And the equivalence in production is from 32 to 142 years. And now keep in mind that this ship is said to have come out of Cyprus with 10 tons of copper. And we know that Cyprus only produces a maximum of 35. So this huge power of the Old World, of the Bronze Age,
sent 1/3 of its copper wealth
only
ship.
had 3 ships in it.
Mm-mm.
They sold 3 ships and that's it, right? And I'm not accounting with the material they need for their own culture, right? So this is how absurd this becomes, and this is why they get so much flack from the academic world. The problem is they are not evaluating this problem from the perspective of what is produced. And when they speak, they're speaking about the amount of ore that was extracted. There are huge piles of ore, yes, but only 3 to 4% of that ore, because it's sulfides. It's low purity copper. It has it requires more fire. It requires additional work that I can't remember the name right now, because it's not just they need 2 processes. When it's sulfides, it requires 2 processes in fire, not just one. And the purity doesn't go. It even reached 99%. So
it didn't. Yeah.
It just don't add up at all. So
I think for me, Ricardo, the new point there, I just want to highlight that was so cool was the mercury. And thank you for the geologic process, dude. I hadn't picked that up about the Ilaburu yet, that they found mercury in it, because we all know what mercury is. Unfortunately, it was in my chemist lab in high school. You know, you put it in your hand, right? It's everywhere, right? It cannot stand up to heat. So learning that this copper on this ship had mercury, and the only place we can find that happening is in the Upper Peninsula, because the mass was trapped in rock, and therefore the copper could not escape. I mean, the mercury could not escape. That's just really cool, man.
That's a distinct characteristic. I mean, that you can't really argue with that, I would think.
So let's try and argue with this slide. This is the deficit percentage of what was mined to the copper that is found. Let's this sink in. So 89% to 99.76% of the copper is missing. So it doesn't matter that you find 3 more mines or that it's just irrelevant, because either you're going to find mines the size of countries, because of it's not the ore that is extracted, it's only those 2 to 6% of material from that ore. It doesn't matter, right? So it's very unlikely that they find any mine that can even reduce this percentage significantly, even if you reduce it by 10%.
By half.
Yeah.
Even by half, still have.
It doesn't matter.
Half.
It's just irrelevant to the question. So to make sense of this imbalance, we must consider the old world in relation to the new. On the other side of the Atlantic, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and adjacent regions, prehistoric peoples mined copper on a truly industrial scale between 5000 and 1000 BCE. I should add that they start mining it around 9000 before Christ. So in 9000 BC, they are already taking copper out of the ground, because in the New World, you really literally took it out from the surface. It's there. You just have to put some fire and then throw cold water, and you take these huge chunks out of the rock. But these chunks are like, there are chunks with 29 tons. There are chunks of copper taken from the Upper Peninsula that are bigger in weight than 7, 10, 15 mines all put together from the old world. So that's the difference. There are
chunks of pure copper the size of buses. I mean, I've seen the pictures, right? And you've got these chunks of copper the size of buses that are pure copper. And then we spoke with Jeff up north this weekend, and Jeff is in the UP, and he's got videos. The way they mine this, they even, when you're trying to find them, it's like trying to find basically a little dugout. They call them divots, because they're just yanking this stuff out of the top of the ground, essentially, and it's coming up in chunks you can hardly even, you could sit on them.
And that's.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Regarding the deficit, would a higher purity of copper, would it have a higher corrosion rate? Do we know anything about that?
Well, I don't know much about it, but considering that some of that impurities are iron, so iron will corrode. Copper will get this green patina, right? But you can clean it, while iron will actually disappear within the
into
copper.
Rust.
Yeah,
right.
So.
But as far as you were saying, like they would have larger artifacts, and then, they would corrode, and then they would make it into something, and it eventually becomes a fish hook. Would a higher purity, would it corrode faster? I mean, even if it did, that still wouldn't explain the deficit.
No, I think the higher the purity, the less it corrodes, because it has less impurities on it. Right. That's my perspective. I'm not saying that I'm correct, but that's how I understand things at this point.
Gotcha.
Right. That's how I understand it, whether it's correct or not. When you've got copper mixed in with a bunch of other rock or whatever, right? It's not. But when copper is collected together in itself in massive quantities, it's not corroding or breaking down as quickly.
Sure. So when the archaeological and geological estimates suggest hundreds of thousands of tons were extracted from the Upper Peninsula, yet the local artifact record is vanishingly small, a scattering of tools and ornaments that together represent only a tiny fraction of the mine total. So you have a complete reverse of what we find in the old world. In the old world, we find a lot of artifacts and just a tiny itsy bitsy of copper that they want us to believe that it's enormous. And in the new world, we find a huge amount of copper that was taken out of the ground, but only a tiny fraction of artifacts. So here the imbalance runs in the opposite direction. Surplus mines without artifacts, where in the old world we face surplus artifacts without mines. The two asymmetries are mirror images of each other. This coincidence cannot be ignored, and read together, they suggest a possibility that neither record explains in isolation, that copper moved between the two hemispheres in prehistory. So the discussion then leaves us with two key insights. First, the Old World mining record is quantitatively inadequate to explain its artifacts. Second, that the New World mining record is quantitatively excessive relative to his artifacts. The question they pose is not simply one of missing mines or missing artifacts, but the possible connections across the Atlantic during the Copper Age. This recognition does not by itself prove transoceanic exchange, but it reframes the debate. It shows that the Old World copper problem cannot be solved internally, and that the New World's copper problem, cannot be solved locally. It makes sense only when considered in relation to the other. So it is from this perspective that the conclusion must be drawn. In the light of the consolidated production totals presented, the structural deficit becomes quantifiable rather than conjectural. And this is the main point, because it is factual. So in light of these consolidated production totals, the structural deficit becomes objective. The evidence surveyed across the Old World between the 5500 and 1000 BC reveals a striking mismatch between copper mined and copper consumed. The archaeological data show that copper artifacts preserved in settlements, burials, and hoards far exceed the volumes explained by currently known mining sites. So we have to find a way in order to how to explain this. So let me just move on to where I was.
Is that mouse heavy?
Yeah.
Sounds like you're lifting.
I got.
Here we go.
I'm changing between three screens, and I got a little bit lost here. But just give me a second.
Take your time, man. It's a lot. It's good to let these numbers sit. I mean, in all honesty, it's good for people just to let it sit, because I think the question becomes apparent when you kind of let the disparity here bubble in with yourself.
Sure, but
go ahead, bro.
So to advance this hypothesis, we are not claiming final proof. Obviously, we are just saying that, and this is being done right now. We just learned that the Boyd Tuttle managed to secure artifacts that have provenance and provenience. They secured the funding from the John Lackfron, and his foundation secured the funds in association with the person that is going to help and facilitate the artifacts. So, and it is this isotopic and chemical fingerprints that could demonstrate the Old World's artifacts being made of Great Lakes copper, and show beyond doubt that in fact there is New World copper in the Old World. So let me see what more I can tell you. I think we should look also to the technological and logistical capacity for long distance transport of copper already in the Bronze Age. So the Gulf Mesopotamian trade, which carried Omani copper hundreds of kilometers to the cities of Sumer, shows that ingots could be moved by sea in bulk. Cypriot copper circulated across Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean. These examples prove that copper was not a purely local commodity, it was already a driver of maritime networks. The leap from regional seas to transoceanic voyages is large, but it's not beyond consideration when the archaeological balances are weighted. So the implications are significant. Even if a portion of the Old World copper supply was augmented by American metal, then our understanding of the Copper and Bronze Age must be widened to include transatlantic exchange. The histories of metallurgy in Europe, the Near East, and Africa cannot be reconstructed in isolation. We already seen this. Nor can the prehistory of North America be confined within continental boundaries if its greatest mining enterprise served consumers a ocean away. So the two records, the Old and the New World, are not contradictions but complements, each supplying what the other one lacks. So the future research on this will pursue three directions. So first, we are trying the systematic isotopic mapping of the Great Lakes copper, and the Old World artifacts must be expanded so that the possible links can be tested with rigor. Second, a better quantification of mining output in both hemispheres is needed. This to sharpen the estimates of surplus and deficit. And third, a theoretical model of maritime contact must be refined, assessing how and under what conditions transatlantic exchange could have occurred in the third and second millennia BCE. These are huge tasks, I know that, but the evidence strongly compels that we make every single effort to do them. That's why I'm surprised that academia is so invested in contradicting all of this instead of moving forward and put themselves in the fray of this testing, because this is absolutely huge. So it's just boggling to me why, in face
Whenever you're
of
reading,
such
can you
evidence.
put the slide up?
Oh, I was
I'm
not
sorry to
reading now.
interrupt you.
I was not reading now, but I can move up to see if
Oh yeah, I just so the viewership could read along next
So
time.
this is the area where the copper came from in the New World.
Perfect.
Okay. So there are tiny bits in here, like in here, and the small islands that produce 100 to 1,000 times more than the whole world combined. The amount of copper is just unbelievable. So in here we have the slide corresponding to the New World. You can see that the extracted material has a minimum of 100,000 tons. 100,000 tons minimum, right? So there are academics that I found, more than one, and that in their papers they claim that this maximum that I conservatively put into the average that academics say of 500,000 tons. But there are some that put this number to 680,000 tons. And yet the artifacts that we find go to a maximum of 5,000 tons. So where did the copper go? Where is it?
Ancient meth heads stole it.
Well, it couldn't be, it can't be all buried, right? Because it's too much. We'll be walking on copper in those areas. It's just too much material.
It's too much to, I mean, I'm curious now, and I don't want to derail you, but about the geologic, questions behind how did this massive amount of copper so pure get so near the surface all over this one specific geological location?
Well, I think I have material on that, but I had to look for it. So you see this piece here? This piece was the piece that the AAPS, the Ancient Artifact Preservation Society, was trying to get funds to preserve in their own guard. So they never managed to get the funds because the owner of the piece was asking something like $300,000 or something around
That's
it.
a big hunk of copper.
Yeah, this is 29 tons of copper in one slab, 29
Wow.
tons. Okay. So this is now in a private collection in Beijing. They are happy. They managed to preserve it, not with them, but it was sent to a massive metallurgy exposition in China. And after that, it goes to Beijing, where it's in a private museum where people can still see it. And they're happy that at least it was preserved and not broken into chunks.
Yeah, because it's a hell of an example, man.
And what they did, and I learned this yesterday, what they did is they turned this into a certain way that to them it looks like the map of China. So they also
That's why
so it has that value to them
that's
too.
cool, man. Trump found a piece of copper that was shaped like the United States. It'd be in the White House. So we're not going to fault them national pride, man.
So in here we can go and look to the first test that was done. So the problem with these pieces that you see here that says Old World Bronze and Old World Copper and the Michigan copper samples, what happened here is that the pieces that were tested had no provenience or provenance. So although experts and Caltech and the places that it's been through, they look at it and said, yes, this is undoubtedly Bell Beaker piece or Old World piece, there are no documentation about them. So the results were considered to be invalid because of that problem. So for instance, in here you see that this is the levels of purity of the pieces. This one is old world purity. You see? It's only 92.4%. But this piece here, it's 99.3. So it's starting to approach what could be Upper Peninsula copper. However, this one has no doubt. This piece that was a bell beaker piece that I think it's shown here. You see? It was 99.9% pure. It's impossible that this piece came from any mine in the old world. In this case, we are looking here. They added this. This wasn't tested by them. They just included this into their study. Is the study that was done on the Otzi X that we can see in the image here. It's that piece over there.
Where was this found, Ricardo?
The Otzi's X was found in the Alps region.
Okay, so it was found in the old world, and the copper purity of 99.99% could not have come from any natural mining source in the old world.
Yes, in this case, I'm gonna just give you a small correction, because
please, man, make sure I'm
this
following
piece you. This piece that he's here. So Oxy's S, you see Oxy's X. They made a mistake here. This is a typo, because when I was studying this, I looked for the museum that holds the piece, and I look into the university that did test the metal for the isotopics that you see the results here.
Okay.
The thing is, this is a typo, because the purity of this, if it was 99.3, it could be old world. Until 99.6, it can be old world copper. Right?
Okay.
And the problem is, this is a typo. The correct value that should be here is 99.73.
Okay.
So it's 99.73% pure, which immediately makes it out of the old world, right? However, they tested the
Where does the 99 come from? The 999.
They tested sorry?
The 999, the last number that you had highlighted. I'm sorry, man. For clarity, where did the 999 come from then?
Let me go.
You showed me the typo, the 973, right? That one.
This is Copsis.
Yeah, okay.
Oxy's
so
X.
all the way over. Oh, so all the way over to the right is a different artifact.
This is different artifact. So this is.
Thank you.
You see 99.9, 99.9. These are two samples. Worked. It's not artifacts. Are two nuggets of copper from the Upper Peninsula.
Okay.
So they have 99.99 purity.
Got it.
And this is in parts per billion. Okay. So it's the most advanced lab. There is no higher machine to do isotopic analysis. This tests 71 isotopic elements. Right.
It's as pure as we can identify pure.
It's as pure as you can get, right? And this is straight out of the ground. Straight out of the ground. You now can get this value. You now can get 100% pure. But it's by a mechanical process that has been invented recently, and that produces 100% pure copper. But this was not possible. It just received 50 years, and it wasn't possible to do, right? So let me see if I find here the mercury. You see the mercury?
Yes.
On the native copper?
Yeah, and it's negative.
1900 and 1500. And in here is just in existence. Why?
The mercury for me needs addressed. I mean, it really does.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to come out here and try to start, answering these things, because not only you showed us how geologically the mercury is present in the copper at those high rates. We've seen how that happened. But now when my mind hears the Iluburu shipwreck had mercury in its copper ingots, copper that had been processed. Okay, that means high heat, what is it, above 500 degrees, was not applied to get that copper into that ingot, right? So I need to look for somewhere where I have high pure copper, where it could be cold processed into an ingot in order for that mercury to have arrived in the Mediterranean on the Iluburu shipwreck.
Sure, you have to see that ship. That ship to me is very curious, not only because of the copper. because it was carrying high luxury items. It was specifically an order for someone that it was very high ranked, either a king, a pharaoh, a sheik. I don't know. It was someone very powerful,
An
because
elite with a
yes,
lot of
because
resources.
not only he was receiving high luxury items, he was receiving material to create 10 tons of bronze, because bronze is made of a relation of 10 to 1. That's exactly what the ship had. It has 10 tons of copper and 1 ton of tin, right? And they say that it all comes from Cyprus because they tested the tin, and the tin came from Cyprus, right? So that's how they are testing it. They're not testing the copper, they're testing the tin for it. So, but whoever was receiving it was all going to produce 10 tons of bronze, and that's enough for you to create an army. Just imagine 10 tons of bronze to create weapons,
Yes.
arrow points. It was an army that was going to be armed with that amount of material. So I think it's highly relevant. And the fact that it sunk in an area that is 40 meters deep is right below the threshold that humans could use to go and try to get it back. Unfortunately for us, it was right beneath the threshold that they could reach to recover the material. So that's why it stayed there all of this time, all these thousands of years. But in the case of, forgive me, in the case of the Otzi's axe, the interesting thing is they tested it and said, "Oh, this copper came from Tuscany." And I go and look, and so why did it come from Tuscany? Oh, because we tested the lead isotopes, and the lead came from Tuscany. Yes, and how about the copper? Oh, no, we tested the lead isotopes. You can, yes, but did you test the copper? No, we only test the copper for purity. So how can you say that it comes from Tuscany? How can you say that a piece that has 99.73% purity, that is not achievable by smelting, could have come from the old world? But Otzi itself is a very interesting character, because
You would have brought that copper over to Tuscany, right? If you had had
exactly
this 99.9% pure copper in your 26-ton rocks pulled out of the Upper Peninsula, you would have brought it back to where your smelting take place. You cold process it, get it on the boat, well balanced to make the trip, like in the Uluburu. You find it with the mercury because you cold processed it over here, because back home in Tuscany, I have all of my other materials I need for the smelting. I have my lead, which has been tested and shown to come from
Sure.
Tuscany. So now my question is, okay, test the copper. Where did it come from?
Sure.
Because if I brought it back to smelt it, then it would have come from over there.
Sure,
from
but
the UP.
but in the case of all, everything that has been melted into a mold, that is the case of the Otzi's axe, the mercury will be lost, because you have
Correct,
to heat it
yeah.
almost to 1,000 degrees. Theoretically, you should need 1,100 degrees in order to melt pure copper, right? But Otzi's was probably an alchemist of sorts, because as I'm going to show you now, he added elements. He probably was himself that melted in a facility, of course, but he melted himself and he produced his own axe. And we know that because in his hair was found a high level of poisoning by arsenic. And you can see he had all of this amount of arsenic placed into his axe, into his piece. And everything that is added to his piece makes his piece halfway into bronze, which means it would be a very valuable item, because his piece had, as you can see, he had a little bit of silver, he had a little bit of arsenic, nickel, he had a little bit of lead, he put a little bit of tin, and zinc. So all of these elements that he added to it make the axe 30% harder than pure native copper that it was at the beginning. This is the paper where you can see where I took all of these data. So his axe was not only stronger, more durable, was more interesting to look because the silver gives it a better patina. It permits that when the arsenic lowers the temperature required. So you sprinkle the metal with arsenic, so it lowers the temperature you need to melt the copper, and therefore you cause less fragmentation, less striation. You get a better piece, a more solid piece, a consistent one, a harder one. And the fact that he was found, he was shot in the back to begin with, right? It was shot in the back. Probably, first I thought it was from a long distance. It wasn't, because whoever shot him went to him and took the shaft of the arrow that wasn't there. So we know he wasn't himself. Took the shaft of the arrow and left the point inside him. And it was such a close shot from an arrow that it almost came out from the front of him. The arrow was just on the limit of his chest on the front, right?
Damn.
And what I find very interesting is, although he was carrying very valuable items at the time, including his axe, herbs, healing herbs on the pouch, materials to do this kind of smelting, he was not robbed. We can see that he was struggling for his life, crawling through the snow while he was dying, and he was taking things off of him because every single thing that was found in a trail with several feet. So he was taking the weight out of him and abandoning things in a way to try and survive in a storm environment that completely covered him, and that's how he was found.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. The fact that he wasn't robbed showed that it was probably the first documented hate murder
crime of passion.
crime.
You know?
Something happened that causes that. So now that we established that we need the new world copper to justify the old world copper and bronze age, we need to start thinking, so was it possible to cross the ocean, right? The question that we are making. And the answer to that is a very big yes. Why? Because if you drop a log into the ocean, this is the current that will take it. And this one will drive you up to 2 nautical knots by itself. Even if you do nothing, this current will take you here, right?
Okay.
So they made this journey, and I think
brings hurricanes here. I know that.
Yeah. Well, you have to choose the time, and still today, it doesn't matter what ship you're traveling. If you find a big storm, you're lost. So it's so the thing.
They say those winds are so strong, a butterfly's wings. You know, down here in Hurricane Alley, we say that the hurricanes, form because it's the winds off the sub-Saharan, the Africa plain there, right? And so they say each hurricane started with a butterfly in Africa flapping its wings. That's how just known even in folklore the prevalence of these winds and currents are.
You see,
Yeah, they knew all about that.
Yeah,
those currents. They found those long time ago.
I need to change my paper here.
Somebody got lost and made it back and said, guess what? There's a river to a new place.
Oh my God.
I have seen the promised land.
I'm going to
just let it take you. I swear. I'm
going to mute myself while I go search the information for this so you can talk amongst you.
So, I guess that's you two, right? Oh, is Sarah taking a break too? Okay. So Jacqueline then. What questions? I see you've been scribbling down. What's jumping out at you so far?
I've just been writing down the numbers about just the difference in found and used in both the old world and the new world, like what was mined and what was actually used or, produced into usable items. And I feel that the evidence speaks quite for itself.
It's a big question.
Well, in a lot of ways, I would actually frame it differently and say that it doesn't leave a lot for question because it's the copper is either present in its isotopic and now like in its very readable isotopic analysis, like from the old world, versus the new world, or it's not. So it doesn't leave a lot of questions for me. I mean, I'm always open to new information coming into the equation, but
Of course.
as it stands with these numbers, it doesn't leave a lot of questions.
Right.
The copper had to have come, especially because that UP copper has that mercury signature on it, right? So it's
That part right there
yes,
sticks out
that's
to
like a
me the
smoking gun
most.
for me. It's such a pure form of copper, which we already established with the isotopic analysis versus the old world copper, which has, a different purity. And we're talking in parts per billion here, so it's very, 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 very close. However, it still has the signature that can be traced back to each individual mine, more or less. And then to add in the presence of mercury, which is so unique to that very specific area, like I don't have a lot of questions. I base my information on facts, and I like scientific facts, and that isotopic analysis with the mercury included really kind of, crosses all the T's and dots the I's for me. My personal opinion is that the dating for transatlantic trade is much older than is accepted. So
Yeah, which is what Ricardo is
for
gathering our
sure.
data for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Sarah. What was that?
Oh, I mean, how we literally are keeping score on our news segment every week. Um, like, I don't even know how many times have we read a story, Jacqueline, and said another point for ancient seafaring?
Well,
Like,
I
we
will,
know,
yeah, I specifically
we
look for
know.
stories that point towards ancient seafaring. Ancient,
Right.
the way that, the way that it's phrased is even problematic for me. Um, yeah, we didn't just discover boats and currents, like,
Ricardo, what was that paper you even sent me yesterday? The Ancient Ocean Crossings, Reconsidering the Case for Contacts with the Pre-Columbian Americas, World Trade and Biological Exchanges Before 1492.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was one of the mass dumps you gave me last night.
Well, I've been
Good
finding
paper.
more and more papers from academic people with clear postulating hypotheses that are based in facts, as any other hypothesis, saying that the transoceanic, that this it's not even transatlantic, it's transoceanic travel was a constant since prehistory, a constant, right? So, uh, as the segment that I'm going to give you now, it says that setting sail from the Pillars of Hercules, ancient vessels embarked southward along northwest coast, African coast, harnessing the Canary current, a reliable, cool, southward flow that goes at 1 to 2 knots that propel them efficiently towards staging points like the Canary Islands or Cape Verde. Paleoceanographic reconstructions from sediment cores affirm the stability of this current through the mid to late Holocene, so 5000 to 1000 BC, with variations so minimal that they mirrored modern patterns, providing consistent propulsion without the disruption seen in the earlier glacial epochs. This initial 1500 to 2000 kilometer segment allowed for opportunistic resupply from coastal outposts, bolstering stores of water, preserved foods, and repair materials essential for the ocean crossing ahead. So transitioning westward, and now we are going towards, we are no longer going south, we are going towards the Americas. The ships aligned with the north equatorial current and northwest trade winds, accelerating to up to 3 knots across the upper Atlantic. And I'm just talking about water current. It's not winds, it's just water current. So,
Right.
and to me, they would travel largely empty. So they had minimal outbound trade, sites as
Going
textiles,
over. Yep.
textiles or luxury goods. And this maximized the internal space for provisions, for dry fish, grains, olives, and water that would be allowed them to do the 60 the 30 to 60 crew members over the 4,000 kilometers expanse. So to me,
Floating.
to
A
me,
little help from the wind.
to me, this configuration was crucial as eastward progression contended with prevailing westerlies that are the winds, yet the southern trajectory migrated these forces as evidenced by replica expeditions completing analogous paths in 40 to 60 days. So they had to have supplies in their ship for at least 60 days for up to 60 people. So that's why I'm saying that they were traveling with very little material and full of goods in order to do this large expanse that was the go voyage.
It would have been ridiculous to travel with the metal needed to smelt going over, right? That sort of addresses why we're not finding all the smelting happening up here where this copper is harvested. It would have made no logistical sense to make this trip. You maybe couldn't even have made it if you're trying to take your smelting and materials over here for processing. You need to get your men with food over there and empty boats to bring your ore back.
Sure. And when after they reach the destination in this period, so the up to 40 days, they can go up to the rivers, they can go up to St. Lawrence, they could go up the Mississippi, or they can just wait that things are brought back to them. But the point in here that we are just focusing now on the transatlantic crossing is that the same current that takes them there, the same prevalent winds that takes them there, and we need to figure out that the ocean back then was up to 10 meters lower. So there was more land visible in such places. So it was not so difficult. The difficulty is probably insignificant, but the water was lower and that allows more land to be seen. So when they are starting to return, when you go to the arrows that is taking them back to Europe here, because this is just the current, this is not the traveling.
The flow
this
of
just,
the water.
This is just the flow of the water.
Right.
You see that not only it takes them directly into the Azores area, which means they can come back loaded with copper and not needing that much of supplies because they will go in the middle of the voyage, they'll find the Azores. So in the Azores, they would pick up new water, they pick up wood if they require, they pick up everything that they needed to do the other half of the journey. And this to me is where it becomes also interesting, because after the Azores, the current either takes them up into one of the major hubs of tin of the old world, that is the British Isles. So the southern point of the British Isles is where the huge tin mines were and are, or take them right into the Pillars of Hercules again, where they go into, and in here, I'm not sure if I have the slides for that.
Into the Mediterranean, where we found the Uru.
Yeah, so this ancient harbor is right after the Pillars of Hercules. This is right after Cadiz. This is called the St. Anna Park. It was discovered just a few years ago. Wow. And you see this Atlantis-like structure that was the harbor. More so, there are an academic paper describing the finding of underwater. Can you see my mouse?
See.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So imagine there is underwater a huge wall coming from here to here. It's the largest underwater structure they ever found. From here to here with a small entrance here, right? So this was a highly secured, highly confidential, highly guarded hub to receiving the copper that was coming. And of course, I'm speculating here before every academic starts with technique.
Of course.
I'm speculating. Yeah. The ships with copper just keep on coming during the summer months. They enter this area that's completely secured by them. They were received by this huge harbor, was processed with the tin that we find exactly on this area again, not only in the British Isles, this is another tin hub, and then sent all over Europe, all over Minor Asia and North Africa and everywhere. The same happens to Cyprus. It will reach Cyprus, it was processed there and then transformed into bronze, or in the beginning was just copper and was shipped everywhere from that place. As we can see, Cyprus could only produce 3 ships of 15 meters long to supply the old world, which it's just absurd. It just doesn't happen. So in this image, you see my speculation on the hubs that is not isolated, because there's other people showing that these hubs, and this is the trade that they say the academics show us that existed. So you see exactly what I was showing. This is Don Anna's Park, the British Isles here, Cyprus, and then was being transported all over the place. Another point that is interesting, and what you are seeing now in the screen is what can only be described as second millennium BC anchors. These are stone anchors, right? And we find these anchors that supposedly never left the Mediterranean, where? In the Azores Islands, in Terceira Island. There are hundreds to thousands of them everywhere, from the coastline into the 200 meters, there is 663 feet, into the ocean, because the waters were lower. The islands were much bigger then, right? So this is things that...
It's a millstone.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of millstones in the Azores. That's...
So
when you're pointing out the Azores, I wanted to see evidence of that, and man, that's crazy.
So the thing that leaves no question that these are man-made is that no matter the shape. So you see in here, I'm showing two different shapes, right? This is a typical Minoan Phoenician anchor, typical rectangular with a hole right there. And this is a more atypical one that they think it was used to balance the ship when there was heavy seas. They put these anchors coming with the ship, and it helps them with the ballast. The thing is, every single one of these stone anchors that they found have the same 14 centimeters hole. Exactly 14 centimeters. All of them.
Right.
They never found one that have a different hole. They all have 14 centimeter hole. So
they are man-made anchors.
Either nature was very
consistent,
keen to make 14 centimeters hole, or something is amiss here.
Or there were a bunch of ships with their millstones, anchored off the coast there, doing this trade. Yeah, the picture of the millstone, man, that's my favorite biblical quote. I love that one. It's really the only thing where Christ says, don't do this, right? Where people are standing against the innocents. And he says, anybody that stands in these path and their path to the Father is better if they grab a millstone, tie it around their neck, and jump to the deepest part of the ocean. Yeah. Thanks for showing me the millstone. Very graphic, he's very delineating there. People like to attribute Christ speaking to a lot of things, but he doesn't say don't do a whole lot. He says do a lot. That's one of the don't do's, where he said, Dad's so mad, you might as well go grab one of these millstones off the Azores and jump into the Atlantic Basin and hope he doesn't find you. Yeah.
So I'm just looking for another passage to read, but before that, I will leave you with this slide that ends this presentation. We've been going for 1 hour and a half. So this is the contrast between the Upper Peninsula and the Old World in terms of what was mined and what was found in the archaeological record. And I'll let you all debate on this a little bit while I'm going to find a passage to finish my presentation.
Perfect. So, Jacqueline, you were given some good points when we broke last. And Sarah, anything for you so far that's sticking out?
I'm curious what key points the opposition tends to focus on when presented with this information.
Good question.
What do y'all hear the most?
So, look, for me, my assessment is this knee-jerk reaction you get to the idea of transatlantic journeys being possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of when I was, interrupting Ricardo, I'm trying to just show that when you're thinking logistically and you look at the facts of the matter, we know those currents exist. How do we know we're not in an ice age? Okay. That is the Earth's, heating, cooling mechanism right there.
Mm-hmm.
What brought us in the ice age and the Younger Dryas was all that cold water, from the, ice sheets and all. When the asteroid impacts happened, that water rushed into the Atlantic and stopped this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as it starts back up, you of course these guys noticed, even if by accident. But anyway,
Right.
that's the thing. I think where all this knee jerking is coming from. So where they specifically dive in, Ricardo can pick up for us. But I think it's overall just sort of a systemic knee jerk reaction. I mean, look, we just had the president declare or redeclare that Christopher Columbus in 1492 discovered America. There is this
Brutal.
right. There's this cultural sort of pressure to not
It's
acknowledge these
well, this
things.
is the thing, like Ricardo mentioned, that there's continuously being papers published, with undeniable scientific proof of one form or another that
Right.
makes it very difficult to continuously deny the
Right.
the I'll say probability, to keep it safe and simple, that there was, transoceanic trade, not just transatlantic. Transatlantic, I feel, is an easy one to speak about because of the currents, because of the way that between the land there is navigatable spaces that we can see it a little bit more easily, but especially between the new and the old world per se. To me it's not an to me, I err on the side of common sense, and to me, it makes sense that, of course, we were trading and traveling back and forth. Like, the first time someone came to America, it did not happen in 1492. That's just insane to me to think that. Also, I live in Canada, and I have been to Newfoundland, where we know for a fact that the Vikings literally showed up and set up shop. They,
Yep.
they built some houses and they hung out for a while at the very minimum. So, and I mean, that wasn't the first time either.
Right.
We didn't navigate the globe on foot. Let's
Right.
that's
Exactly.
that's just ridiculous. And I am of the opinion that I disagree with continuously assuming that we are in our golden age of information and capability.
Amen to that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah. I mean, I always remind myself that I garnered from my experience, walking myself out in the woods and all that, and get in touch with, my basic sort of human self. I, Here's what kept getting pointed out to me was I am an anatomically modern Homo sapien with the exact same processes. That means the exact same consciousness, the everything,
mhm,
right? Okay. So these dudes were going to be thinking like we're thinking. They would,
yes,
of course, been whatever's in front of them, right? Instead of an iPhone, it's rocks
Right.
and sticks and winds and currents, right?
that we know
But
of.
they're still going to they're gonna right. Well, we're talking, post-diluvian, and let's
Mhm,
remember these people don't even want us to admit, antediluvian, right? But yeah, if you just can accept that these were just people, man, and they're just like us, and they were thinking and working and interacting with their environment like us, okay?
yeah,
That means most definitely, somehow, even by accident, they were so in touch with the environment. It's so ridiculous to think that they did not understand this basic current system that Ricardo was showing us,
yeah,
um, yeah, I'm with you. I really am. I think it's a discredit to the human race, to our capabilities, and to what has been our experience here, because they want us to believe, as you say, this is the highest apex we've ever been, right? And that makes it so much easier to keep us where they want us, if you ask me.
sure, claim supremacy.
Yeah,
We have not reached our maximum, I think.
we haven't. I don't even think. I think we are indeed a species with amnesia. I
Oh,
think
many,
there's so
many
many
times over. Mhm,
capabilities within us, and just things that we're not aware of at the moment because we forgot.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had boats, people.
We had fucking boats.
We had
Wood
boats.
floats, wind blows, currents move. I mean, it's not,
That's what Sarah and I always say. We had boats. They had boats.
they have
We
fucking
had boats.
How
boats.
shocking.
No, they were extremely bright and intelligent, but then they reached to the ocean and said, "Oh, that's a wall. We can't
Yeah,
go
that's
in
the
there.
wall.
That's the wall." Right. So, but I
Throw,
think
throw my rock at it. It didn't fix it. It didn't go away.
I, th-
I'll go back to my cave.
I think
Yeah.
this lines from the last paper that we have on Academia of the Institute is called "The Silence of the Ocean: A False Dogma of Isolation."
Mm,
The introduction reflects exactly what we're saying and says There are few ideas more extraordinary or more revealing upon the limitations of modern academic thought than the assertion that the vast oceans of the earth were once impassable barriers. One that wants us to believe that for tens of thousands of years, humanity, a creature born to explore, to dream, to build, and to voyage, stood upon the shores of the Atlantic and the Pacific and simply turned away. The Orthodox historian tells us that until Columbus, no ship had ever crossed the Atlantic, that until Magellan, no sail had cut the Pacific horizon. In their vision, the oceans are voids, deep, dark, silent, and impassable, while human history is confined to the disconnected islands of culture, each developing in a splendid isolation, untouched by its brethren across the sea. This notion, repeated and reinforced for over a century, is not a conclusion born of evidence, but of absence, an absence manufactured by the narrow philosophy of modern archaeology. For when we look to the seas, to the evidence of ancient navigation, to the recurrent symmetries of myth, symbol, language, and artifacts across continents, a different image emerges, one of continuity, of movement, of cultural osmosis. Humanity has always been a maritime species, and the oceans have never been walls. They have been the arteries of civilization. And I think I'm going to stop here, otherwise I won't stop. There's a lot more of this.
It's beautiful, beautifully
Thank
said. That was really good.
You
And it
should put that in a
expresses,
sermon. That was.
yeah. I mean, you felt that. I mean, I felt that. My humanity,
Yeah.
felt that. My curiosity felt that. My sense of adventure felt that. Yeah, my sense of wonder, all the things that we operate on. If we get outside this modern matrix that's trying to fool us, then we begin to understand that these people would have operated with as well.
Oceans were not barriers. They were the highways, like the rivers.
They were highways.
Every single water was the easiest way to travel. It's just
Where's
logical.
the most habitable location, y'all? Just if you're thinking of where's the best environment for human beings to sort of exist on a regularly and low maintenance basis, it's coastlines, right?
Near
It's
the water.
Yeah, coastline specifically, I mean, you've got everything
Yeah.
you need there for life, and you can thrive. So just to think that, yeah, like you say, that's a wall and a barrier is very outdated thinking, I believe.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the
That was brilliant.
presentation.
That was brilliant. Ricardo, that brought up lots of new things for me. I've been through this several times for you, but I think when we do another show, there's some interesting mind-opening aspects. My mind sees when I look at where did this pure copper come from, and why is it on top of the ground, in such mass quantities. Look, I've found large amounts of precious metal, right? I proved it to myself by putting it in muriatic acid, right? So what do I see in my open-minded investigation? That's an antediluvian source for what I found. So my mind on our show, Ricardo, would like to play with that notion of perhaps where did all this pure copper come from before the Younger Dryas impact event? That and the mercury. The mercury for me, I would love, because I don't know, and I am sort of the layperson in these categories, I would love for somebody to walk me through how that mercury got on that Illiberu shipwreck and those processed ingots. Yeah, so I really enjoyed today. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you for listening. And I hope everybody
Yeah,
has
it's-
enjoyed at home and I was not too overcomplicated or unintelligible. Because I think
It
the
was-
evidence is very simple to understand. So it's vast, but it's simple to understand.
It is.
It
And it's
is.
just,
It's pretty cut and
go ahead.
dry.
The math
go ahead.
speaks for itself, right? Like it's very simple to see that
Yes.
what we have, what was found, and what was mined it's just not add up. So, and then
It's quite
And I suck at math.
right? Same, sister, same.
like it's a very simplified percentage and easy to see. So, And
I like envisioning the process, you know.
mhm,
I like not once you get past this narrative blindness of these transatlantic things maybe couldn't have been happening, and you start looking at just the process of the human beings discovering these currents and the process of how the ships would have come over, right? No, the stuff needed for the food so that the ships could have come back on the current the right way, and the smelting, you know, all of
mhm,
these things are such a beautiful story,
yeah,
right? That would be missing if indeed true of human ingenuity and exploration, and I just love that part of it.
it's such
Once
a
you let those numbers elegantly fit, then you have to explain the story, right? And it's just a really cool
yeah,
story to
that
me.
in tandem for me because I love the evidence that each individual mine can be, we can have break it down to isotopic analysis and see specifically
Mm.
this artifact was created with copper or any, any metal from anywhere. We can see with quite a bit of certainty that it came from or was sourced from this particular place. So that is pretty undeniable truth and proof. So
Yeah.
if you are finding artifacts in the old world that are comprised of copper that could only have come from the UP, you know, there's not much really to argue about in that
Yeah, it's time to
instance.
start telling me about
Right.
this story.
Then
Yeah.
it's time to start talking about, well,
Yeah.
okay, well, how did that actually occur?
Amen.
It didn't happen by accident, and it wasn't something that you can kind of brush under the rug. It's tangible. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is.
Then if
It
we could
is.
all get on to how did that transpire, then
Right.
it goes a long way to understanding
Yeah.
specifically who, what, where, when, and why. How.
We are. We start painting a picture not of these brute, you know nothings that were banging rocks and fire together till some shit happened and an iPhone came out. You know, it gives us a much richer story of what humanity is and who we were, right? Why would we not lean into that? Why
Well,
would we not, with all of this evidence, lean into this beautiful story about what humans could accomplish? I mean, I know the rhetorical answers because then we learn more and we learn our power and who we are.
but it's extremely geopolitic, this copper problem, because it implies that uh, by saying that they only found the Americas in 1492 or whatever it is, I don't remember the name exactly. But when they find closer
That's
to the
it.
1500s, when they find Americas, they could claim the land because the land was inhabited by
This,
these semi-nude creatures that had no writing language, that were extremely primitive and didn't know God. And so by papal decree, any nation that didn't know God or was primitive
mm,
could be educated and taken by that
mhm.
group, right? It's the same reason why Portugal won't admit that the Azores were occupied since, at least from academic evidence, from the late Neolithic, because we find the same dolmens in the Azores, right, in the middle of the ocean that we find in Europe. The
Yep,
same
all over
structures,
Northern Europe,
the
same.
same
Yeah,
structures, right?
yeah,
And so the Portuguese don't admit that because they want to claim ownership of the islands. We found them. We colonized them. It's ours. But if it is occupied by someone else that also has a civilization to contend with the one that you are showing up with, then you cannot have it, right? So all of this creates a geopolitical scheme that forces them to put Columbus at the head of the discovery of the Americas instead of being Minoans, Phoenicians, Chinese coming from the Pacific. Uh, when you look at the evidence, if you do a simple search for papers showing evidence of transoceanic crossing, you'll find that there are halogroups in genetic traits. There are chickens that don't belong on where they are because the chickens belong 5,000 kilometers away on the other side of the ocean. You'll
Transatlantic
find
chickens.
it,
Why did the chicken cross the Atlantic? Because of the fucking copper, y'all. No.
Oh my God.
so if you are in the business of trading metals in the emergent world of copper use, and you know by previous contacts, at least from the 1300s, 1200s, 1100s, there are the chronicles, there are these archive documents that show that missionaries, that priests, for instance, you have these priests that escaped Iberia during the Moorish invasion and they went to America. They are in the Vatican, right? You have this guy called Peter de Roo that was contracted to go to the Vatican and look for records of something, whatever, I can't remember what it was. But he kept finding these tales of this continent on the other side and the descriptions of what the people went there saw, right? Of course, none of this is taken into account because it doesn't fit the narrative, right? So at least if we go into those archives, we have at least known of the Americas from the 1100s, and they tell of a very old exploration of that land by trade of minerals. Everything is connected, right? And they don't want
You
that.
connected a big one for me, man, with the dolmens. I'm sorry I got to throw this out because the dolmens have always been a mystery for me. When I'm looking at all the antediluvian side of all things, right? I look for these stone structures. And when I look in Ireland and the UK, and guys, there's 500 fucking dolmens, these big giant stones, right? With stones laid across them, 500 per county or so. I mean, the number is ridiculous. When you look at the map, you can hardly go somewhere along the coast in those counties, especially in Ireland, without tripping over one of these things, quite literally. Now, when I ask, well, what are they? I don't know. You know, who put them here? Oh, it's rock. You know, I don't.
Nobody
We can
knows
find
anything.
Nobody knows. So when you tell me that there's dolmens in the Azores, way over the fuck here on this route that would have been key to these people traveling these currents, which flow from the Azores up over to where they had to get the 10, as you said, up in the UK, right? And now they've got all these dolmens up there. Well, what is that? If I'm operating by sea, that's a signpost. That's a lighthouse. That's hey, here for, you see where I'm going? It makes these dolmens make
Yeah,
sense.
it's
And
not
I appreciate
like
that.
really, it's not even just dolmens. Like, how many times have we seen a collection of evidence that speaks that this culture, this culture, this culture, this culture, separated by thousands and thousands of miles,
Right.
mountainous ranges, oceans, that they were all doing the exact same thing at the exact same time is not, that's not, what do we call it? Coincidence? Like, it's just ridiculous. And
Modern Homo sapiens sapiens have been on the planet now for what, 300,000? And we found one in China that hints at millions. Yet for some very strange reason, about 6,000 years ago, all over the world, these independent pockets of people decided to fucking start planting shit in the ground instead of wandering around at the exact same time.
yeah, I think like at this point in my mind and in my heart, I just feel like if you want to do serious discovery and research, that you should just forget the narrative, just go with the things that you
Correct.
like, for instance, like this copper presentation, it's literally showing to you that there was transatlantic trade. So going from the premise of that information, just go forward with that in your mind, that there was transatlantic trade, that there was oceanic trade. So then all other research after that proven fact
What's so
becomes
hard about
more,
a little objective free of narrative observation?
and as anyone who's an independent researcher is not bogged down by the narrative. You can leave it behind. You don't need to. At some point, some of these things become not even worth discussing and arguing. Not to say that discussion isn't fruitful, but there's no point in arguing with people who are hell-bent on keeping them in place because it doesn't serve anything. So,
Well, you hit eloquently, Jacqueline, on what is kind of the crux of much of my own personal attachment to everything we're doing here, right? If you go to my X page and you see the video I've got pinned up, it's the first video, Finding Things Within and Without. And in that video, I described that how I got where I am was I was through a personal process of learning to detach from my own narrative about my own experience in my own life, right? So that I could navigate some waters and go within myself and make some pertinent changes. Now, through that, I learned that you could, because when you're your pain, right, and your life is hammering on you as hard as it can, that is when you learn to detach from that, right? In order to observe
Yes.
that directly, you personally experience the power that you have within you to not be fooled by anyone else's narratives. You can disengage and see things simply for what's in front of you, right? That's how I navigated those deep waters. So when I got over here and I started seeing things, I was applying the same methodology. I could sit, I could forget what I knew, what I thought, what anything happened, and I could just look at what was in front of me and I could start asking some really serious and intriguing and curious questions, because I was doing that. And that's why I personally harp always on narrative blindness, because it is real. And I do have empathy because I myself went to the same schools everybody went to, especially here in this country. I received the same narrative. And trust me, it was a struggle to walk myself out of it. You get called crazy, you get labeled all kinds of things. But when you have detached enough to see what's in front of you, your passion picks up because you know what you're seeing. You learned that you're not colored. You could forget what you knew about your experience enough to go through things most human beings would balk at. So I know I can sit here and look at this thing and not worry about what anybody says and go where those questions take me.
Yeah, but
And that's how we advance.
This has very deep roots in terms of not being recognized by the academics, and the roots of that dissociation with data comes all the way back to the global hallmarks, that we find the exact same architecture built exactly the same way under the same laws everywhere at the same time, and that implies diffusion. And diffusion is a forbidden word for 99% of archaeologists or academics in history in general.
It's one of the insults they throw at Graham Hancock most readily is, him and his diffusion philosophies. That's woo,
Well,
yeah.
but diffusion is the easiest way to explain. I might not saying this correctly, but it's the Occam razor of all of this, because we're seeing the same thing emerging at the same time, done the same method used to build it up, right? This would lead us into the megalithic world and its
the simplest, most elegant, parsimonious answer is like you're saying, man. The only way these things popped up at the same time is if somehow this info was being shared concurrently.
Right. We do it now. We have the ability to communicate to each other, and all of a sudden everyone's doing the same thing because that information, a new trend hits, everyone starts doing the same stupid dance or saying the same stupid phrase because the information is readily available to everyone. So it's happening now. So if that was happening 10,000 years ago, pick any time frame you like, it's probably because they were communicating.
Right.
Right.
And the only thing needed to make that possible was not an iPhone, it's a boat.
Yeah.
It's a boat.
Exactly.
And we had boats.
It's Conan Doyle. Once the impossible is removed, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
Right?
Once you eliminate the impossible, what remains is the truth, no matter how improbable.
They had boats.
Facts.
They had boats. There were boats, man. Yep.
Look, if you live in
theme of the day, there were boats, dolmens, and Mercury.
Let's just imagine that you are in an island, 6,000 BC, and you know exactly what your island has in terms of trees. And you see arriving in the coast a piece of wood that you know doesn't exist in your island. So immediately, because you're not stupid, right? You understand that this tree, this wood, came from another place with
Somewhere
land.
There's a tree,
right? So I want to go there
somewhere. Yeah,
yep. I want to go there. Even if by that simple process, even if you have 30,000 people, there is going to be a crazy one. There's going to be
one cutting some wood back home, drying it out, and going, watch, I'm going to throw this shit in, okay?
I don't like
a letter to this one, and it comes back on the other side 3 months later,
I don't like this country, so I'm gonna. I know there's another one over there, and I'm gonna carve a canoe, and I'm gonna get there.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. I've had enough of y'all. I'm out, of course.
And they see the birds coming in. The birds, they know they don't exist in their land. right? And they
Right.
see they're coming here each year and going away, and they know that these birds don't live on the water; they
Right.
live on land. So they
Right.
must be coming from somewhere that the bird can traverse. Okay, I know that birds can travel huge distances, right? But they stopped along the way. So the only place that I know that they can't do it, for instance, is when they're traversing. There is this goose that travel every single year through the top of the Himalayas,
Yeah.
right? And that's the hardest part of their journey. Is they have to go really high to go over these mountains in order to get to the plateau valleys beneath it, right? And so, yeah, that would be something that would be impossible for humans to recreate, but we know how to go around.
We had a boat. We could have followed them
Yeah.
from island to island.
So,
Yeah.
so these ancient travelers on the ocean, they were following the birds, they were following the currents, they're following observational elements
Observational
that
data.
that
Yep.
they knew would lead them somewhere. And after you
Yeah.
get to that somewhere, you know that it exists, and you can come back and say, "Ooh, I found something," and more
Yes.
people go, and then you find this indigenous guy that has this ornament on his neck or has this huge piece on his
What's that shiny shit? Is that copper?
do you by any instance have more of this or know where I can find it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it must
I got to
come.
what? I got to marry into your clan? Okay. We'll hang out here and marry into your clan to find out where all this shit is at. My boss sent me because we have evidence, right?
Yeah,
of
but
Vikings and all sorts of people sort of hanging around with the natives for a while.
that's
Yep.
another argument that they use. They use the argument that there are no old world artifacts in the new world. So if these people were coming here to get the copper, there's no trace of them. Why isn't there?
There are some, but they like to debunk them.
The problem is, there are almost 30 to 50,000 artifacts that show that they come from a culture that doesn't belong in the new world. They have plates with 9 different types of languages that weren't found. We didn't even knew some of them existed when they were found, and still they are debunked as false. So everything that comes up in the archaeological record that contradicts what they're saying, it's immediately called a fraud, or it's a makeup to make money when no money has ever been made from these species. So
it almost has an eerie echo of an anti-human message to it. It's kind of creepy the way when you get in here and you look at one side of the story has such a beautiful example of human achievement and possibility, and then how out of knee-jerk reaction they dismiss all of the evidence that points otherwise. Right? It seems like something that is trying to keep our idea of what humanity is down. That's all. I'm not talking about people here. It's just when I see this as it's being described, that's what kind of weirds me out a little.
I don't want to
It
be
makes me.
I don't want to be depreciative with this, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say. Unfortunately, most of these species were found by the first settlers, and these
Right.
first settlers happened to be Mormons. And the Mormon culture has prevailed and kept these artifacts for 200 years, 300 years in their possession. And then at a certain point, they said, we have so much of this, we don't have the space. So they started giving it to institutions and to museums. And they looked at this, this is all fake, go into the basement. And no one else heard of them. So when they start seeing that happening, these artifacts become dispersed between several individuals that have interest in them, and some of them have 1,000 pieces, or they have 400, or they have 10, but they are all in these private collections. And archaeologists and historians use all of this. This is just Mormon. They're just trying to prove a religious point. When the interesting point is, for instance, in the case of the Phoenicia, the ship that was built according to 600 BC methods. Everything from the beginning of the building of the ship to how it was sailed, it all follows those these methods. Not only they went around Africa, completely circumnavigated Africa, they also, after 10 years of the ship is left there without use, they pick it up 10 years later, and they sailed from the Mediterranean into the United States. right? So when they say, oh, these ships were fragile and so on, it stayed 10 years out of the water and it was still navigable. In fact, they had to cut it to 1,000 pieces. That happened the last week, right? In order to put it in 240 feet containers so they can ship they can move it around the country. It's going now to Utah, but they can possibly move it around the world and assemble it in 2 days and show the world this ship that did this journey, that showed that it is possible that a ship from 600 BC could travel anywhere. And they didn't use modern instruments. They used very good sailors, people that knew what they're doing, and did the trip. They had a small engine on the ship that they only used when they reached the Americas, because the laws don't allow a ship to enter by sail into the port. That's the only time that engine was turned on, was to move them into the port, because they don't allow them to go by sail, for obvious reasons. They're going to take everybody in front of you, right? So there's no brakes. So it was done. So most people talk about Thor Eidenhall that did these journeys. Well, Thor Eidenhall is a hero. He wrote many books. He's an excellent author, excellent explorer, but he failed every single one of those trips. None of them reached their destination. And no one talks about the Phoenicia. Why? Because the Phoenician accomplished every single one of the journeys that he was set out to do. He circumnavigated Africa and then came all the way in one go from the Mediterranean into the America, right? With 600 BC technology. That's why it's not spoken out loud, because it did it. It actually achieved it, right? So,
Right.
We had boats. They worked.
They had boats and they worked.
I'm going to shut up so you can end the episode, or you'll stay here for the rest of the week.
It's a great topic, man, and I'm glad we've had fun diving into it. Every time I find more things, and it's just such a beautiful story when you let yourself, start pondering on it.
Right? That's the thing. Like, let humanity have its
Give us a
glory.
win.
Yeah.
We need a win right now, y'all.
Like, let us have our glory. The real story really is one of perseverance and ingenuity and bravery,
Yes.
So yeah, like, I'm quite over
Precisely.
pretending that,
Brilliant. Exactly. Exactly. Look, why sustain, lie? Now, I'm not going to use the word lies, right? But if you are past something, why participate and sustain it? Why hold yourself
yeah,
back?
and I feel like a lot of people would have criticism of our conversation here, but I would say that how many times, points, and moments along the way has evidence that upholds our conversation here been dropped, forgotten, put the wayside, not reported, not written about, not put into chronological order or contributed to a paper or whatever, because it's just not accepted. Because if you speak of these things, then you become, black sheep.
Right. And we don't have to support that structure that they're trying to put in place. We just don't.
Yeah.
And criticism has no place for me, because what have we just done for 2 hours? I've had an excellent conversation.
Yeah.
I've been touched quite emotionally by the possibilities of human endeavor. I've learned new things, right? And I have enjoyed this, right? So why criticize people who are enjoying putting questions out and looking for truths about the glory of the human story?
Yeah, like, it's all right to
Wow.
it's totally and perfectly acceptable to me to speculate or to theorize about things that, seem outlandish, or, you can you can theorize about whatever you want and
Right.
not be it's all right to be wrong, and it's all right to, guess. Even to
It's
fantasize.
best not to know. I mean, that's the whole point. That's the only way you
Yeah.
can get to the subjective observation we're talking about, is if you can get to the point of, I don't know, and I don't have to know.
Yeah, it's
Right?
I think a big thing
And that's okay.
yeah, it's all right to say, I made a mistake, or I have no idea. Can we talk about this? You don't have to know everything all the time to, it's too much hubris for me.
It really closes the gap between us and our ancient ancestors. You know what I mean? The way we're all sitting here right now trying to figure out is exactly what they were doing with the log and the current.
That's right.
You know, we were capable of it. We're capable of it now, and we were capable of it then. So,
Here,
I
here.
mean, and then there's power in that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Look at you
inconvenient
bring
for
it
us to know
home.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's you couldn't have said it more beautifully, sir.
I would say that it far surpasses reasonable doubt, and therefore deserves attention.
Same.
And like just Sarah, to echo that point, I mean, look at what we're doing, you know, and that's brilliant to go that these people back then would not have had this weird dogma and this matrix of understanding that we all have forced upon us, right? So they would have been doing what we're doing here. And that was a beautiful sentiment. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we want to thank the Podfather for his wonderful presentation
Absolutely.
on copper.
Bravo, sir.
Uh-huh. And of course,
Definitely.
Brother Shaman for assisting.
Brother Shaman.
I'm honored and pleasured with always, you know, it's not work when you love it and when you're hanging out with friends. So
No, it's like
that's
we
all
get to
there's
hang
it.
out
Amen.
all the
Thank
time.
y'all. Yeah.
How lucky are we?
Blessed out our ass is how they'd say it right here.
That's right.
I can't even stay on my seat. It's just
So many blessings.
Rocket Man.
For real though, it's always a pleasure to
Mhm.
sit down and trade some knowledge, and
For sure.
this is what it's all about. And you know, all we can do is put it out there and show them what happened to our log when we threw it in the water. So
Look at my log.
What?
Look at my
Look at my
log. Yeah.
My log of blessings that I just laid out into the Atlantic and let it float across.
Let's see where it ends up.
There were so
Mommy.
many blessings, I could just pull it back. I mean, there's still.
Mommy, I left it here, I swear. I left it here. Where did it go?
Too
Well
funny.
done, all.
all
Yes.
right, guys.
Love you guys.
Love y'all. Jacqueline, you want to tell them where they can find us?
Of course, Sarah. You can find you on YouTube, on X, on Spreaker, on Rumble, on Instagram, and Facebook. Ta-da! Yes, also you can support the show via our Buy Me a Coffee link and at our merch store. Make sure that you check out our brethren here on their new podcast, The Shaman and the Philosopher. Also, please, we would like to encourage everyone to visit the website for the Institute for Natural Philosophy, where you can find out all kinds of delicious facts about what we do and why we do it. And yeah, Universe Unveiled drops a new episode every second Wednesday, and we do a sweet and cute little news segment every Sunday at 11:11, which you can find on YouTube and X. Yeah, that's it.
All independent
Yes, ma'am.
researchers out there that are putting your sweat, blood, and toil into these topics because of your passion and your love, please find us at the Institute of Natural Philosophy.
Come
We'd
find
love to
us.
talk to you.
Come find us. Come
Yes.
join us.
Amen to that. So thanks everyone for hanging out for another great UU crew session. And that's it for now. Everyone have a lovely week and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.